What is up, YouTube? This is round two. I tried doing a go live earlier and discovered my headphones were in fact working. My audio monitor wasn't pegged, so I just kind of assumed the mic wasn't working. But you can hear me just fine. In my prior recording, I took off the headphones, and that was not a great idea. So I'm gonna just start the whole morning over again. Good morning, everybody. This is Road to Recovery, and it is 15th, 2023. And this is the Monday morning chat where I allow you the opportunity to be able to chime in on whatever, porn addiction recovery related topics you choose to talk about. So feel free to just jump on and chat if you wish. If you do not chat, I will just talk about the things that I want to talk about. And so today I'm going to talk about, you know, getting and building new habits. So a common problem that happens for people who are in the porn addiction and porn addiction recovery space is that their field of focus is kind of narrowed down into I've having all these problems and I don't know what to do. Stress, anxiety, social discourse. You're having interactions, problems with your girlfriend, your wife, your family members, coworkers, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of chaos going on in your life, and typically the person who's coming into the recovery space, they're really good at starting the bad habit, right? The bad habit was an easy thing to do. Why is that? Well, the bad habit has a reward built into it. Think about any bad habit with chewing your nails, right? The person who's chewing their nails, they're feeling satiated by the experience, right? Like there's some sort of reward that's given to them from doing that. We talk about like the higher level stuff, like gambling, for example. Watching pornography, like all of those things have a built-in reward. Smoking, right? Drinking, all of those things have a built-in reward into the mechanical process of doing the consumption itself. So if you think about a lot of what we would call good habits, you could probably think of a few that do have an intrinsic value or intrinsic reward built into them, but a lot of them are just routines, right? The routines that don't necessarily, in and of themselves, have a natural aesthetic that gives you some sort of high or some sort of pleasurable experience from doing the thing. They're just activities. So when you come across like a habit that you know you want to start taking into your life that doesn't naturally have something that is immediately beneficial to you, maybe the benefits are like long term and lasting, but it's not an immediate benefit that you're getting out of it. How do you build a habit out of that? Well, the answer is built into the observation, which is that the bad habits have an immediate reward built into it. And what you have to do when you're taking on new habits is you have to build in the reward. So if you're writing it like a sentence, right? Sentence has got you know, the subject, the predicate, so you're building the structure of the sentence. And as you get to the end, when you get to that period, right? That period and before you get to the period, there has to be some sort of tangible things, tangible reward that you're going to build into it. As an example, if I was going to say start a jog, and as you all know, if you do any sort of athletic activity, sometimes there can be a reward into it, and certainly that there is an endorphin release once you start getting into the process. But early on, man, when you start jogging, if you've never done it before, oh, it's brutal. It's like you've got all this physical exertion, so your body is just going through this drain, and you don't have the motivation to do it, and all these bad things are happening. um, Build a reward routine into that thing at the very end, and it has to be immediate. That's the only thing about this. It has to be immediate, and you just build a reward at the very end of it. So do the run, do the jog, and at the end of the jog, the second you're done, for me, I like coffee. Coffee's a cool thing. So I can go make myself a cup of coffee real quick. So right up, run right up my driveway, go inside. Coffee makers is already on. I just pour the cup of coffee and right. And that's an example of being able to tack on a reward onto this difficult thing that you didn't want to do. It could also be like a light snack. Sometimes for some guys, it'll just be like, hey, you know what? This will be the time I let myself play that one video game for the day, You set a time limit on that, but you're not trying to make a new bad habit, but um, you give yourself a reward right away. And this is behaviorism. This is behaviorism at its easiest level. So you do a routine, you get the reward. You're Pavlov's dog at that point. Pavlov's dog. They knew that the treat was coming, and they really start salivating in anticipation of that retreat. That's the condition you need in order to be able to implement the new habit or new routine. So the routine becomes a habit only by repetition. And you have to keep that repetition going for months. There's no exact, time frame on this, but you keep consistency on everything you're doing. So it should be always in the same location, same cues, same rewards, right? You stay consistent and you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And then before you know it, after a few months, if you were to just all of a sudden stop, your brain would be like, oh, you would actually have a triggering event because it wants to continue doing that thing. That's what a habit is. So you keep doing that. Just give yourself at least bare minimum 2 months of nonstop, consistently doing the same thing. And like, let's just say that your new routine is going to have it needs to have novelty or uh, differing things that go on. I would say, like, let's just say you're working out, right? For the first 2 months, keep the routine very consistent. If you're doing chest on Mondays, it's chest on Mondays, right? If you're doing legs on Tuesdays, legs on Tuesdays. Keep it consistent. Do the exact same workouts all the time. Just do them all the time for the first 2 months. You can change it up later, but for the first 2 months, you're trying to stay in that mindset where you're showing up and you're always doing the same thing. And then once you've gotten into the routine, like, it's just, this is what I do every single day. This is what I do. When your mindset is that way, then you can start looking at changing things up. Same thing with jogging. Early on, I tell people when they're jogging, it's like, hey, don't go pick and choose like a different thing all the time. Like, um, you know, set a starting place maybe from the front of your driveway in your house and go 2 blocks, or then go to four blocks, but do that constantly over and over and over again. And then once you've gotten to the point where you're sleepwalking through that entire thing, then you mix it up. Go try the new challenging hill or a different neighborhood or that park nearby. Like, go do that. So you can expand on these routines later on, but stay consistent early on so that it becomes a habit for you. What else did I want to talk about this morning? Oh, and before I forget about it, for the people that are in new to recovery and space, getting into these routines while you're doing this, um, bring somebody else into it. Like, bring a recovery buddy, bring your sponsor, and tell that person, hey, you know what, I'm starting up this new thing. I just wanted to let you know I've started this up. And check in every once in a while, like, maybe like the end of a week, Friday. It's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I did 3 runs this week. Right? It's so easy. What's going to happen? It's going to manifest inside of your mind. You're moving it from your cognitive, I had to do this, I had to do this, I had to do this, back into your core brain functions. Like, so it stops being the mechanical process that you have to think about and starts being a subroutine that is lower brain function stuff. It's just processing. It's not even thinking about it anymore. Um, what else did we want to talk about that? So that's my talk about consistency this morning. Your brain on porn had posted 10 signs and symptoms you could be addicted to porn, and I just wanted to read this over. This comes from Wales Online. All right, so they list the symptoms of feelings of guilt and shame when engaging with pornographic material. And if you have heard my earlier chats about this, shame is not necessarily a component of porn addiction. So, you know, although they mentioned this number one, I would say that it's it can exist and it may not exist. Increased porn use, definitely. Sexual dysfunction, So if you're having erectile dysfunction or any other types of sexual dysfunction, then that's probably a warning sign. Disconnect between yourself and your partner's loss of interest in intimate relationships, loss of interest in loss of sexual libido, using it as a method of self-medicate to relieve uncomfortable emotions. I don't know why that isn't listed number one. I don't know why that isn't listed number one. That's like that should be like the first one. Develop unrealistic ideas about sex, loss of motivation and pleasure in daily activities, being drawn to extreme porn, risky behaviors like watching porn at work. And so with those last being drawn to extreme porn and risky behaviors like watching porn at work, they're actually kind of the same thing. So um, and I know this from firsthand experience that when you start consuming porn so much and so often, um, it becomes routine. It becomes blah, right? And the sense of risk that happens when you start going into wild ass porn, like whatever that version of wild is to you. Once you start elevating that, it elevates your mood, right? So it's giving you an additional kick inside of your experience of consuming it. So both of those things are tied together because it's actually raising or elevating you, because what you had going on before became a routine and it just feels common. It doesn't have the same spike it used to have for you. Um, everything else, the developing unrealistic ideas about sex and loss of motivation and pleasure in daily activities. So loss of motivation from daily pleasure, that's getting down to what's going on with both your serotonin levels and the dopamine is the learning mechanism, right? It's not the actual high that you receive. So there's other endorphins that are at work inside of your brain that are giving you that kick that you usually feel. um, Once you start going through this on such a regular basis, the constant consumption of porn, the day to day feels bland. It doesn't feel motivating anymore, and you're constantly looking for that new high. And so, everything that surrounds that, everything that is surrounding you is also the periphery to your addiction now. Your addiction is now you, and everything else is just kind of on the outskirts. So all the things that used to be inside of your life, that used to take first and center stage, because they had active interest for you, they no longer have that active interest. They're kind of like orbiting around you, and you don't take interest in those things anymore because the thing that's activating your brain is like really engaging you right now is that porn, right? It's the thing that guides you and ultimately drives your motivates you to doing the things you want to do. um, and so that's why we go into recovery space, because there is a process there's a process to getting the blinders back off and opening you back out. And it's not just simply stopping. Stopping's part of it, right? But we have to start re-engaging. We have to start re-engaging all the behaviors that you were positive inside of your life, and sometimes starting new behaviors, maybe behaviors you weren't doing before that need to happen so that you can get your brain back into the process of working normally again. And that doesn't happen if you're actively in addiction. You have to stop the addiction. You have to stop the porn use. Absolutely have to do it. It says here, like most addictions, a person suffering may associate a sense of shame with their addiction. However, it is important to reach out and seek help. If you think you may be suffering from a porn addiction, you could speak to a GP about it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to stop the sentence right there. I'm going to be honest with you guys. The GP is probably not going to help. The GP is probably not going to help. Most GPs have no idea about what's going on with porn addiction. I'll be the bearer of bad news on that one. Have no idea. It's a matter of fact, it's a consistent thing that I talk about on my channel, that general practitioners and the scientific community at large There's a lot of debate whether porn addiction actually exists. Now, I know from my own firsthand experience that yes, porn addiction definitely exists. Like it is very real. It manifests in the minds of people, and you exhibit all the signs of addiction while you're in the addictive traits. Um, and it sucks. And unfortunately, looking to a general practitioner for answers about things is not the right first step. Yeah, you might get lucky. Maybe you have a good doctor, but I would say that if you even suspect that you have a porn addiction, try to find a therapist, a psychologist or psychiatrist with the proper credentialing in this area, right? So not just a generalized sex therapist. Go get yourself a person who look for the words sexual addiction. And if you live in the United States, you can look for somebody. It's called a certified sex addiction therapist, right? It's a good qualification to have, but it's not the only qualification, but it's a good qualification to have if you're looking to go to a therapist for help. Says that porn addiction is treatable with your GP may suggest that you seek a counselor, which they certainly will if they're even halfway responsible. There's also the option of rehab, particularly if the addiction is severe. And I've said this before, rehab's nice if you can afford rehab. Hey, go for it. It's going to cost anywhere between 25 and 50, $55,000 for a facility like that. So you're spending a lot of money. You want to know what's a much cheaper solution? Get yourself a therapist and see if you can get it covered under your medical insurance. And then go find yourself a recovery group. I did it. I didn't have to go to a rehab facility. I went through therapy. I went to 12 separate meetings. I'm been starting one right now. I've 3 months now, and we're working on a brand new group. But I was in SLAA, and I was attending SAA. I did that for 5 years. So yeah, it's a really good strategy. And a nice thing about that, all the things I just told you about consistency, about starting new routines, new habits, good habits. That's what you do inside of a 12-step room. Absolutely. It's the starting place. So you get yourself inside of a room, but it doesn't end there. The second you get outside of rooms, you have to keep that practice going. So all the things you pick up inside of the recovery room, you keep ratcheting onto it. For me, it was you know, learning meditation, learning cognitive behavior therapy, learning yoga, right? I had to make all of those things a routine in my life, and I had to keep the routines going. All right. Um, is there anything else in this article I wanted to talk about? According to Pornhub, since 2010, it's been recorded that Pornhub visits, specifically from mobile devices, have grown 1,424%, with users returning to their smartphones for porn more than all platforms combined. I don't, Pornhub lies a lot, but that stat I do not disagree with. If there's one thing I actually agree with is that their stats are probably pretty solid. They keep their metrics good because they've got to be able to go back to advertisers and rip them off. So, yeah. Anywho, that's that. I'm going to cut it short today, guys. If you're joining me, feel free to chat down below. If not, I'll just keep talking about the things I want to talk about. Oh, earlier this week I found this article, and it was by Slate Magazine, which Twitter for some reason um, blocked, which is kind of funny because it was literally a news article. There was no reason to block it. There was nothing dirty or obscene about the article itself. I didn't agree with the article, but there was nothing dirty or obscene about it. It says what happens on a feminist porn set. And so this was just it was an essay that was written by, what was her name? Kelsey Burke. And she went on to basically a porn set, and it was made by this feminist producer. And she wrote this long, lengthy thing about, it was kind of like an observation about what's the difference between, a regular porn set and one with feminist values, right? Feminist values. Um, if I could sum up this entire thing, uh, you take exploitation, right? And there's different levels of exploitation, but let's just say, like, if your version of exploitation is treating your performers poorly, right? It's like, whether they didn't agree to come to the set, so you're making sure they agree, right? Well, they don't want to do sex acts. Okay, you don't have to do that sex act. Right? So you concede to all these things that you consider to be the negative selling points of pornography, right? Um, poor treatment of performers, um, exploitation, and surprising them with acts that they didn't want to do before they came on the set. Like, all these levels of things that happen, right? Let's just say you removed all of that. Let's just say you removed all that. The author's point of view is that by doing this, by having women in charge of the camera and the production, that you've made it a better art form. And maybe that's true. Um, to the point that I would contend, or um, contest, really, the point that I would contest is, you're still making commodities out of human sexualization, right? You're still commoditizing the human body. You're still commoditizing, the act of human sexuality, wrapping up in this pretty little bow that says it's feminist now because we made sure the performers were treated fairly, right? And you're still taking this commoditized sexuality, throwing it out into the marketplace. And now, is it a better product because mostly women are consuming it? That's an open ended question. I would answer no, that it's not a better product because you did that. It's the same product. It's always been the same product. You're commoditizing human sexuality. You're putting it through this marketplace and asking your consumers to consume it with the nice fluffy words that, oh, this is a better thing now, without observing the activity that you're doing, which is that you're actively consuming, sexuality that has been, put in front of a camera, performed, not done out of its own necessity. This is not two loving human beings that are, enjoying each other's presence. They're being paid to do a sex act, right? So it's still the same thing. Might be a little lesser edgier, but it's still the same thing. So, this whole article that they've produced is basically in defense of porn. And it's in defense of porn because it's done the right way, but it's still in defense of porn. And this is the sort of higher level reasoning that has to go when you see things like this. And it's one of the things I've actively been discussing, because I'm seeing a rise in the production by certain publications. Slate, um, what was the other one? Rolling Stone. Um, what was the other one? Daily Beast. I'm just listing three there off the top of my head. Consistently publishing, um, porn apologetics. Consistently publishing porn apologetics. And you can, don't rely on what I'm saying. You can go back and check yourself. They consistently make articles about pornography that defends it from the right of, it's a First Amendment issue. It's a human sexuality issue, and it's always in defense of, never critical of. They have an inability to do that, which is kind of a tell, right? It might just be that, um, the mindset of the publishers in those periodicals, are very sex positive, so sex positive that they'll defend porn to the bitter end. Um, or it could be that, if I could give you a little bit more conspiratorial, that they either have friends or means by which the industry, the greater porn industry, is in some way giving them either a kickback or access. I don't know which. Um, but I can't, that's just all speculation. That's speculation on my part. But anyway, these are the things that are important because you're going to see a lot of contesting of ideas about, porn addiction in general and a defense of the porn industry and specifically. And it's happening from relatively large outfits. Um, you have to be critical. You have to have your eye open to what's being said. I could read all the way through this article. I'm not going to do it this morning because I don't feel like it, but I could read all the way through this article and you will hear a concise emotional appeal for why this is a better thing now. And it ain't going to work. It's not going to work. I'm not going to allow it to work. You're not going to pull the wool over my eyes and say, oh, yeah, it's a better industry now. Come on back. All right. I think I'm going to wrap it up. No one's online today. So, let's call it a day. Thanks for everybody tuning in. If you like what you hear here, if you like what you hear here, please like, comment, subscribe. That helps drive it up. Just the last last word. I don't monetize this channel at all. This is not monetized. This is me giving back. So I'm never going to generate a revenue from this. This is all helping other porn addicts. This is something I do because I care about other people. I never want them to experience the things that I've gone through. So I'm here for you guys. Anyway, take care of yourself. Stay on that road to recovery.